Senator Mike Lee of Utah was among the first to warn about the consequences of President Obama's unconstitutional recess appointments. Senator, thanks for visiting the Heritage Foundation.
Thank you.
Why are these appointments unconstitutional?
Well, Article 2 of the Constitution outlines the powers of the executive branch, chiefly the president. And Section 2 of Article 2, in particular clauses 2 and 3, talk about the fact that presidential nominees to executive and judicial positions have to be approved with the advice and consent of the Senate. They have to go through Senate confirmation. Clause 3 of Article 2, Section 2 says that during a recess of the Senate, the president may fill vacancies by just appointing them, even without Senate confirmation, and that they will remain in office only until the expiration of the next session of the Senate.
Now, during the time that the president said you were in recess, the Senate passed legislation that he went on to sign. So aren't there really just some political games being played here?
I think he's reading the Constitution in a way that is manifestly wrong. It's contrary to the text, it's contrary to tradition and practice, and it's contrary to logic. The president says that he had the power to make these recess appointments because he claims we were in recess. The problem with that is the Senate had just convened for the second session of the 112th Congress just the day before. And the Senate was holding regular pro forma sessions, as they're called, basically every 72 hours during this time period. And the president has said, well, those aren't meaningful enough because often those are just gavel in, gavel out sessions in which no real work transpires. But that really doesn't work because just a few days before he made these appointments, on December 23rd, 2011, we had such a pro forma session in which we, the Senate, enacted very meaningful substantive legislation involving an extension of the payroll tax cut. So the president's analysis doesn't work. It collapses under its own logic, and it ignores the fact that the Senate was not in session for purposes relevant to the Recess Appointments Clause at the time he made these appointments.
The president said he took this action because Senate Republicans were acting as obstructionists. Is that a fair criticism?
No. It's a word that he uses whenever the Senate does something, or anyone does something that he doesn't like. What we're doing is defending the constitutional prerogative, the institutional prerogative of the Senate, something that is not a partisan issue. This is neither Republican nor Democratic. It's simply an American issue. It's one that recognizes that we have a system of separation of powers created by the Constitution. We have to respect that.
You've testified before Congress, and you've been one of the most outspoken critics of the president on this issue. What other steps are you planning to take?
Well, of course, it's not my practice to show all of my cards in the middle of a card game. But I will tell you what I've said publicly, which is, in addition to continuing to beat the drum and continuing to make the case publicly as a matter of basic constitutional law and history, custom, practice, and tradition, I intend to resist the president's nominees, to vote against a number of them, even though in the past he's had my almost complete cooperation. I've voted for a lot of the president's appointees, even people with whom I had pretty deep philosophical disagreements, because he is in fact the president. Elections do have consequences, and I've wanted to try to be as deferential to him as I could. But now that he's disrespected our confirmation prerogative like this, I'm not going to give him the same deferential standard that I've given him thus far, and you'll see a lot of no votes from me when his appointees come up for confirmation.
What are the long-term implications of the president's power grab, and do you worry that future presidents could follow his precedent?
I'm very worried, and I've made clear that this is not a partisan issue for me. This has nothing to do with that. I would be equally outraged if this were a Republican president doing the same thing, and I intend to hold future Republican presidents to the same standard. That's why I'm so concerned about this, is that once this gains some momentum, this practice could be very destructive to the Senate's prerogative of advice and consent. This is a power that doesn't belong to the president. It belongs to the people of the United States of America and is authorized to be exercised by the people's duly elected representatives in the